Hi, everybody. Welcome to season two of OK Everyday, a podcast about TA, where we continue diving into how to make our lives okay every day. Hey, Jason,
Hey, Ollie, so good to be here. Season two.
season two. And we're starting off season two with a very, very powerful topic. And today we're talking about
Strokes and stroking. Ba-bum.
strokes and stroking. It is a powerful topic. And once we're on that topic, I'd actually want to give a stroke to all our listeners and to all our viewers. Thank you very, very much for being with us for season one and now hopefully for season two. And we will continue, thankfully to you, we'll continue bringing awesome content about transactional analysis as we go. So there you go. Is that a stroke,
Yeah, I
Jason,
tell
for
you
me?
what, that's a beautiful stroke. That's stroking in action. That's a beautiful stroke, which is, I'm sure already the listeners are going, what is the story with this word stroke and stroking? Because it's a bit of an unusual word, but as you and I have talked about a lot, Ollie,
True.
TA chooses words intentionally. It's not random or kind of made up. They choose these words intentionally. And stroke, in particular, is a word that's been chosen by Eric Byrne initially. But uh, through this session, people will get a deep understanding of what that means. Because if you just said it to anybody,
Mm.
hey, have a stroke. Here's a stroke. They'd be like, what? If you didn't know what it meant,
So
what do I mean a stroke?
I feel okay. I don't feel of going in a stroke.
Am I
That's
having a stroke right now? Well, not in the way that you think, right? So I'm very much looking forward to this session because, as you said, stroking is very powerful when it's done intentionally, right?
right. So if we're talking about stroking, and both of us have prepared a few definitions of it, do you want to kick us off? Like what would be a stroke?
Right. So the kind of technical use of the word stroke when Byrne was talking about it is a basic unit of recognition. That's the kind of definition that he put together, or one of them anyway, because he wrote a lot, and I think you've got a few there, Ollie, too, as well. So what does that say? So it's
Mm,
something to do with recognition. You're recognizing somebody or something's being recognized in a certain way. He says it's the
mm,
basic unit, so we can break it down and measure it is what he's
ooh,
saying there. So it's we can get a sense of what a stroke is made up of. And
mm,
you and I will talk a little bit about that in this session. So one of the beauties about stroking is actually you can quantify it. So when you want to give more, or are
mm.
you giving less, or what type of stroke, what type of recognition are you giving? And of course, as you and I know, Ollie, this can make a world of difference both in personal relationships, but in particular in professional relationships, right?
That is very true. The definition that I had is actually it's building on top of what you said in terms of recognition. So stroking is any act of implying recognition of another's presence. And this is from the man himself, Eric Byrne, one of his books.
Games people play
And
by the look of it.
games people play. That is exactly the book. Uh, Majority of my quotes are going to come from here. So just setting the foundation for any future any future episode. But it's any act of implying the recognition of another's presence. And I really like that. And it could be, again, it could be negative, it could be positive, it could be verbal, it could be nonverbal. And this is something that we're going to look into a little bit further in the episode.
Totally. And I've got another one here from one of my favorite writers, Thomas Harris, in his kind of seminal book, I'm Okay, You're Okay, which you and I love, Ollie, by the way. We love this idea of I'm okay, you're okay. So
True.
Thomas Harris, MD, he said he talks at a deeper level about stroking. So one of the things I love about stroking and why Eric Byrne chose the word is its origins. So Thomas Harris talks about it here. He says, every child is stroked in the first year of life simply
Mm,
by the fact that he or she has been picked up to be cared for, as in lifted, held. Uh, Without at least minimal handling, the infant would not survive. Right. So why the word stroke? So Thomas Harris is literally touching on it here. So when we're born
mm,
as infants, right, we've just come into the world, we've been in liquid for a long time, up to 9 months plus. So when we come out, it's pretty scary. We're cold. Our eyes are not so good. We are completely vulnerable and helpless. So the only
Hmm.
way that we can survive is if somebody physically holds on to us, physically
Okay.
holds us. And and that's where the origin of the word stroke comes from. It's skin on skin, it's touch. So
Mm.
the infant realizes on some level that it exists because something else is holding and caring for it. And I love that because you may not have been around an infant for a while, Ollie, but as soon as people get around infants, they love to touch and smell them and stroke their hair and cuddle up to them. And, and the infant, every time that happens, feels this great sense of recognition and love and affection and grows through the experience. So
Wow.
it's quite a powerful word, right? This word stroke.
I don't believe we've like, personally. So I don't believe I've personally went into that depth of where stroking comes from. It was
Mm.
just kind of so for the ones who are listening, I'm petting my hand. That was for me was what stroking is. Basically, kind of a
Yeah,
a form of physical recognition, but it goes so in both ways, historically, or may I say, kind of originally, it goes very deeper from the infant times, but also wide-wise. It's very wide in terms of it doesn't have to be only physical, but it could be. You know?
yeah. No, well, this is it. So if you think about, if we just stick with the physical for a moment, if you think about pets, one of the
Mm,
healthiest things that we give and receive is petting pets.
mm,
Cats and dogs and you name it, any other animal. Just sitting there and holding and touching, and that's very very powerful because we get a lot back, but so does the animal. But of
right.
course, it can't just stay. We can't just give recognition by stroking people all day because we probably get, it doesn't work well, especially not in work, right? So we have to, as we grow and evolve and develop, we have different types of recognition, right? And of course, verbal. Okay, so we move from recognition being hands-on, to
Right.
recognition being hands-off, and what we say and how we say it
Mm.
is how we give strokes as grown-ups, really. You know,
What a way to start season two, Jason. What a way to start season two.
I think that's a positive stroke
It
that you're,
is.
you're giving to us
It
for
is.
this
I mean,
for this podcast.
I believe it's one of the most smiley podcast episodes that we've had in a while. But building on top of that,
Mm.
and just as you said, there are different types of strokes,
Right.
right? So what are we talking about? So what
Yeah.
types of strokes are we talking about?
So there's three basic different types of strokes, but I'm going to just talk about two of them in this episode because in the next episode I want to talk about the third one. Right.
Ooh, nice.
So the first type of stroke that we can give can be quantified by positive or negative. Right.
Right.
So when we're giving somebody feedback, if you will, if you think about saying something to somebody, is it positive or negative? Because they will receive it in that way, right?
Right.
So and that's very important when it comes to recognizing people, right? So how are we recognizing them? Are we giving them good, positive, healthy feedback, or for whatever reason, are we giving them negative feedback, or are they receiving it as negative for some reason, right?
Mm, hmm.
So that brings into play the next type of stroke, which is verbal or non-verbal. So
Right.
what we say and how we say it, but also our actions. What
Hmm.
kind of messages are we giving off with our body that are also strokes and can be perceived or received as negative, positive? So negative, positive, verbal, non-verbal. They're the two main ways that we recognize others and ourselves.
Mm. And before we go into examples, though, I just wanted to kind of so with verbal and nonverbal, I think it's more straightforward in terms of you can either see them or you can hear them. With positive and negative, I wanted to clarify because if I say something as a positive, it doesn't mean that the other person will receive it as a positive. So it's also a matter of perspective, or is that it's always if it's intended positive, then it's a positive stroke.
That's lovely where we've gotten to already because this is where it's so interesting and slightly complex, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
So you may believe you're giving a positive stroke, right? Say a positive verbal stroke. right?
Right.
That's your intent, and that's actually might be what you're doing. Now, the other person may not receive it as such.
Mm,
And what I mean by that is it's not that they don't receive it as positive, but they may not fully allow it as positive,
mm,
right? Which we'll explore
hmm.
in further sessions because
True.
it gets a little bit deep. So although I might want to give a compliment, or that I do give a compliment, the other person may not fully absorb it as a compliment. But
Mm,
that has nothing to do with me in that specific transaction. That's what I
okay.
was doing, but it's what's happened for them up to that point.
So just to summarize, when we're talking about strokes from this perspective, as in positive, negative, verbal, nonverbal, it means
Mm.
as they're coming out from us, right? So coming away from
Yeah.
us, they're positive, negative, verbal, nonverbal.
Yes. Yes. Now
Okay.
here's in something interesting again. So I might um, consciously think I'm giving a positive stroke by the words I'm using, but actually, based on my body language, I'm giving a negative stroke, which we can have a play with today. Because
Oh, for sure.
it's not just about words. People say, "Well, I said something nice," yeah, but you didn't say it in a nice way. Do you know what I mean? So this is where becoming more kind of savvy and kind of aware of our strokes makes a world of difference because we can really hit the mark when
Wow.
we slow down and think about it.
Now, we did have an idea of putting some examples here and play out some examples.
Mhm.
Now, so how do you want to manage this, Jason?
Well, and we're conscious of the listeners, right? So there'll be
Exactly.
it's a little bit difficult for the listeners to see non-verbal strokes, but we'll have a go at describing them, right? So let's say I give you, Ollie, a positive verbal stroke, right? Okay,
Okay.
so Ollie, I really love doing this podcast with you. I have a buzz every time we do it, and I look forward to every time because of what you bring to it. Okay?
Aw,
No,
thank you
no,
so
take it
much,
easy.
Jason.
So actually, you just accepted that. You just accepted that by saying thank you very much. You could have said lots of different things, but you said thank you very much.
Mm,
So Vupa got in. Okay?
yeah.
So that's a positive verbal stroke. Okay, Ali?
Okay. I'm getting
Okay.
ready
Are
for
you
this
ready?
one.
Are you ready? Okay. So I'm going to do a negative non-verbal stroke. Okay. You're going to have to describe to the viewers what describe to the listeners what you see. You ready, Ali?
Yes. So it looks as if Jason is, well, he's first of all nodding his head and he's really, really disappointed in something that I've either said or did, or just by me being me, which is even worse.
I'll put a few noises in. Yeah, see. So it got into a little bit verbal there with the noises, but you could tell from my face,
Right.
right? What did it feel like when I was shaking
So
my
yeah,
head at you?
when you were shaking your head, it felt like genuine disappointment. Something was wrong, and without it being addressed, there's kind of a gap. But I mean, that's I think that's a conversation for another time. But the stroke itself, definitely, you could see a negative reaction. You could see all the signals of it being shaking the head left to right, which, funnily enough, in Bulgaria, that would mean yes.
Oh,
So that would be a positive stroke. Again, accounting for some cultural differences,
oh,
which is
fantastic.
fascinating, fascinating.
Yes.
But in say in the culture that we're in Ireland, that would be perceived as a negative. So saying no, shaking the head from right to left would be a no, right?
Yeah,
Or
and
something like that.
frowning. You can
And
see here I'm
frowning it.
frowning. My eyebrows are together. So you actually what you did there was lovely because when you picked it up as disappointing, which is exactly the negative stroke that's being put across. But
Hmm.
then it goes into this kind of ambiguous space. Disappointed in what? What did I do? Is it me? Is it something I did? So that's the challenge here with what we call unconscious communication. Yeah, is without bringing it to the surface. So how were you to know what you did wrong? Because I haven't
Mm.
said anything, but you could tell from my expression that somehow you've done something wrong or there's something about you that's wrong. It's hard to tell, right?
Yeah, something is wrong and it's not being addressed, and that kind of itself seems frustrating.
So I'll give you a positive, and this is a very familiar one because people can do this at distance. When they're completely different sides of the street, can give a positive non-verbal. You ready?
Okay. Yes. Oh, Jason is happy to see me for everyone listening. He's smiling and waving his hand at me across the street saying hi. But he's not saying hi. He's just showing hi. That's what he's doing.
Correct. I didn't say anything, but you very quickly picked up that I was recognizing you in a positive way by waving at you.
Mm,
Yeah. So this is the beauty of communication when we break it right down. We're giving off in a way recognition nearly all the time.
mm,
But if we're not savvy at it, we can obviously give a whole lot of types of recognition that can be hurtful, you know what I mean,
right.
or kind of be belittling or whatever. Do you want
Mm.
to? I'll test you now. Do you want to give me a a, a negative verbal? I'm a big boy. I can take it. What could you say? We haven't prepared this, ladies and
Yeah,
gentlemen, so I have no idea where
yeah, yeah,
where Ali's going to
you're
go.
giving me the hard ones. You're giving me the hard ones.
Well, that's it right there. That's a negative
You're
recognition.
giving me what you're doing, Jason. I do not appreciate this.
There you go. You got it. God damn you! You're giving me the hard one, Jason. We never agreed to this. Fantastic, lovely, well done. Okay.
Oh,
Now, do we
pass
have
the
any?
test.
I
Yes.
think you've got some from TV because that's one of the things that we've been looking at.
I think we're we're jumping into the usual section of our episodes is Tom Hanks and Robin Williams movies that are good for TA. So a few of them which actually I found very interesting, all great movies. But we've talked about Robin Williams and where there's examples of positive strokes, not only positive stroke, but generally stroking would be Good Morning Vietnam, for
Mm,
example, one of them. And for example, a way of acknowledging someone's presence in He Received Robin Williams or Adrian Cronauer was the
that's
one he was
right, the
playing
DJ. Yeah.
receives positive feedback from the troops about his radio show. You know, they were all
That's right.
fascinated, so there was a lot of recognition there. You also mentioned when we were preparing from Robin Williams of Mrs. Doubtfire.
Oh yes.
Mrs. Doubtfire was the one that was giving out the positive strokes to her children as their nanny. You know, it's like everything happened. So that was another great example.
And actually, with
Um,
that one, Ollie, if even when he's not Mrs. Doubtfire,
mm,
when he's just the dad, he talks beautifully about his kids. He really wants
right.
to see them. He really wants to be with them. He's his dad. He wants to spend time with them. So it's very kind of moving
Hmm.
when he's himself talking about his love for his
Right.
kids, and it's full of positive strokes,
Beautiful.
positive verbal strokes. Yeah.
Beautiful. The other example from Robin Williams would be again that came up was Good Will Hunting, and I think it has a balance of both positive and negative strokes within the movie, not only from Robin Williams's character there, who's the therapist
Mm-hmm.
for Good Will Hunting, but also from Will Hunting and towards Will Hunting, and
Mm-hmm.
so
That's right.
there was also like a physical altercation there. I think one of the reasons why he got into problems in the first place, et cetera, et cetera. But also the way he was supporting Will Hunting
Mm-hmm.
throughout the therapy sessions, what I think were there are a lot of examples of very positive strokes, how he was opening up to him
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and showing his personality.
Quite deeply, actually. Yeah. I agree.
Um, so what do you think about those movies? Anything come to
Yeah,
mind to
yeah.
you?
Actually, there's I think some great ones because interesting enough, there's a good mix in um all of them of positive and negative strokes from Robin Williams. Do you know what I mean that particularly when he gets angry? And nearly,
Hmm.
that's a lot of negative stuff comes out when he starts to get angry in a few of them. Not as much as the positive stuff that he gives.
Sure.
But he can be with his emotions. He can move quickly within these movies. That is into putting down, and pointing out what's wrong, which
Right.
again can be a negative stroke as opposed to working towards solving it together. We'll look at how these things play out in the different ego states a little bit down the track, right?
Yeah. And moving to Tom, okay, we can't leave out Tom Hanks from this conversation.
Mr. Hanks.
Mr. Hanks, and one of the movies that came to mind was Big. So,
Oh yeah.
and the positive stroke that I remembered from there was he got a job for a brilliant idea as a kid, you know? So that was a amazing stroke.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember when he met up with his young friend when he got maybe his first paycheck and
Yeah.
jumping around happy as they couldn't believe it. Look at all that money. Oh my God, you know? So they were certainly sharing a lot of what would that be? That would be non-verbal positive strokes. They were super happy.
There you go. Nonverbal, nonverbal positive stroke. There you go. And and another one, and like I think it's a classic for a lot of reasons, but also Forrest Gump came to mind.
Yeah.
There's a lot of positive, negative strokes. There's a lot of life going on there generally. So there's both verbal and nonverbal. I think we were discussing in an episode earlier the drill sergeant kind of approach.
Oh
That was
yeah.
kind of very verbal, sometimes negative, but there's also sometimes unimaginably positive, as in when they're praising Gump for being so immaculate and
Yeah,
getting the rifle together or something in a short period of time. But they're shouting, which kind of feels okay. Did he do something wrong? But they're
it's so
praising him.
funny, isn't it? Yeah, he's giving a positive verbal stroke. You know, my God, Gump, you're the best at this. You know, like, but he's screaming it at him. So, but but us, the viewers, we still got. Oh, he's giving a positive stroke. He's done something good. When you know that's a very interesting twist. Usually, it's the other
True.
way around, right? You know.
Yeah. So Jason, how do you think we've done so far?
Yeah, I
Good.
think I think we're doing a good job of showing the difference. Now, I was just wondering, like, why is this useful? Like, why might it be useful for
Ooh.
people, like in work or at home? What are your
So I
thoughts?
think the more we go into the topic, the better, because we're going to be looking at things like the stroke filter and generally how to stroke from the parent and from the child's ego state. And then it will combine into an understanding of how we could actually use this. But I think this episode is great for just raising awareness to the strokes that are happening on an everyday basis, and they're happening much more often than we think they are. Um, but once we recognize them, we can actually do something with them from ourselves. So we can be more intentional in giving strokes, receiving strokes, or kind of acknowledging them. Like when you were doing an example, but I said, "Oh, thank you," because it actually genuinely felt really nice you saying that. And acknowledging those strokes is also a great way of interacting with other people. So I think one of the things that if I'd sum up this whole episode, there are a few things that kind of come to mind. And first is that the strokes or stroking is, apart from being very intentional TA term, it's also a form of recognition that comes from very, very deep in our childhood, as we're used to being held, literally held, and thus giving recognition and acknowledgement. And there is also positive, negative, verbal, and nonverbal ways of giving those strokes to people. And as long as we find ways to acknowledge them and identify them, even sometimes in movies, just put yourself like a small goal, see a movie, what strokes are happening there.
Yeah.
You know, it's a great exercise. And identifying them and understanding them is a great step for going forward. So how does that sound to you?
Brilliant, brilliant. And it sets us up nicely for our next session, which is strokes in action from the parent ego state and the child ego state. So spot on,
Wow.
Ollie. I think we've done a good kind of foundational chat about what a stroke is and how
Hmm.
to play with it like we were today, but also how to, I love your invitation now to do an exercise. You know, if you're watching movies, see if you can spot the negative, positive, verbal, non-verbal, you know, which ones are more
Oh, for
powerful, for
sure.
example, you know, as we track on into the next episodes and talk a lot more deeply again about stroking.
Exactly. And again, to the viewers and the listeners, we're trying to be a bit more inclusive with every episode, describing what we're actually talking about, and for the people who are listening to the episode only. And thank you for being with us on this episode of OK Everyday, where Jason and I talked about strokes. And when we talk about strokes, we mean the transactional analysis understanding of strokes, not any other health condition. That's not what we're talking about today. And if you like this video, please press the like button and share your thoughts in the comments down below. If you're interested in TA content, amazing. We're in season 2 of OK Everyday, so we're going to continue bringing you amazing content. So hit that subscribe button and we'll keep you informed of every new OK Everyday episodes coming out. In any case, we really hope that you stay okay
every day.
every day.